we've seen a video recently posted by Jake Paul of him showing his kicks, and then
Yeah.
he said added Bellator and PFLs, kind of putting it in. Maybe he's looking to enter the MMA world, and of course he's already mentioned before. He said, I'm pretty sure, as he said, 10-0 in boxing.
Yeah.
He said that he'll enter the MMA world and compete. And first off, he's first got to get 10-0.
Yeah.
If he's able to transition to MMA, of course we know he has a wrestling background, as he's wrestled in high school at a pretty high level in Ohio. His wrestling background, it would really be a backbone for him, and it could get him some decent success if he really puts as much effort as he is into boxing right now.
That striking in boxing isn't necessarily the striking in MMA, and even the on the feet striking is completely different. I mean, when you learn footwork in boxing and when you learn footwork in MMA, it's completely different. And even the way you block, and how the gloves are 4 ounces in MMA, you can't just put your hands up and expect shots to be blocked. Doesn't work like that. It's completely different striking, and he'd have to learn a completely different sport, which would be very hard for him. It's just come on, like why would he go into MMA? I mean, he's making millions off of boxing and just calling out whoever he wants and then just picking and choosing his fights that he wants. So I mean, he's obviously called out Jorge Masvidal for a UFC fight. He said
Yeah.
he called out Dana White, said he'd fight a one fight deal in MMA if Dana accepted his
No
offer.
chance.
I said I would fight Masvidal in MMA. I said I would fight MMA. I said that I would retire from boxing, and you avoided all of that shit. Hold on.
No chance he'd ever
Realistically,
go to
no.
MMA to fight bro. Brilliant kickboxer, and it just obviously would not fight Jake Paul in MMA. Maybe in boxing that could be a competitive fight, but in MMA just stop. Like,
It just makes no sense. Maybe I could see Jake Paul entering the octagon as like a one-time thing, maybe
Yeah.
once he's fully done with boxing.
like a one-off.
Otherwise, it makes no sense. Yeah, like a one-off. We don't fully know what level he's at yet in boxing, as he's only fought a couple of guys and UFC guys, so it's a bit different than fighting a full-on boxer.
If he did go into MMA, he'd probably fight a boxer. Because I mean, everyone,
Yeah.
everyone claiming, yo, Jake Paul needs to fight a boxer. You'll pull up Canelo in
You'll
MMA.
finally fight a boxer, yeah.
That's the only way you'd fight a boxer. But if he were to enter the octagon, I mean, there's so much you'd have to learn. First of all, just obviously a completely just different sport, and there's so much to learn in MMA. It's such a complicated sport with all the martial arts that are in there. And I mean, he is athletic, and you've seen him at least advance in boxing to a certain point. Right, so I mean, if he was fully dedicated to MMA and actually wanted to be a real MMA fighter and trained for years, and obviously he's rich, so he has access to the high level training. I mean, he said he'd train with Team Khabib, which that would be insane if he actually did. Imagine Jake Paul training with Khabib. I think it doesn't really make sense. I mean, he's making so much money in boxing. He's literally making millions by just fighting guys who aren't even boxers right now. But he is looking to fight a boxer potentially, and I mean, there's no reason, there's literally zero reason for him to have just learned all of this in boxing, put his life on the line to go into the boxing ring and learn all of what he's learned in boxing, just to like throw that all away and just be like, fuck it, I'm doing MMA now. Like,
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
not doing that. If anyone thinks he's doing that, you're dreaming, because there's not
Yeah.
a chance that he's gonna be able to do that, or that he wants to do that, because he's done
Yeah.
all this in boxing. He's not just gonna throw it all away. Makes no sense. But for him to sign with the UFC for a one fight deal with Masvidal,
There's just, well, first of all, there's zero, like, literally, like, zero chance he signs with the UFC.
yeah.
And maybe, like, a one-time thing with Bellator or PFL, but no way
Actually,
UFC. As he's
it's possible.
literally made so many
I think
statements
it's possible.
saying how the pay is wrong in the UFC, and it would be kind of contradicting, and just, it would look bad on him if after all this thing he's talked about the UFC and were to just join it. It would look weird for him and his kind of character, and make him, people even question more his shtick, I
Okay,
guess you could say.
but realistically, he joins MMA. He's not gonna join Bellator or PFL. I think I
True, but
I think
it's tough to say.
I mean obviously Dana's had big rivalries with a lot of different people that he ended up coming to terms with. I mean, Tyron Woodley was his champion for like a couple of years, and they never got on good terms. Obviously Ben Askren as well. They didn't sign him until he was in his late 30s, and he was already retired at that point. So obviously those are completely different situations. This isn't Jake. These aren't guys who are calling out Dana White every minute and trolling him and calling out his fighter pay and his system
Yeah,
and
it's not
all
the
this.
same, but
It's
like,
it's completely different. But if Jake Paul actually entered MMA, he's not gonna fight in Bellator or PFL. I think he's somehow gonna come up to an agreement. And I mean, I don't know if it is contradicting for him to join the UFC, because I mean, the whole reason he's been calling out the UFC is because they don't pay their fighters. So I mean, if he joins the UFC and then he doesn't get paid, I mean, he kind of just played himself, not really. I mean, yeah.
One reason why it could be possible for maybe Bellator to have one fight there is due to Scott Coker, who's the owner and of Bellator, has some connections with Showtime boxing, which Jake has been fighting at. So maybe something might go down there. And you know what actually would be a decent, or would make sense kind of as a fight for maybe MMA. Obviously Jake Paul would get killed, but like
What is it?
just imaginary, like Dylan Dennis, as because we
Oh,
know all
bro.
of their beef they've had there. Obviously, Jake would get his leg snapped off,
Jake would
but
absolutely get mauled. That would not be
yeah,
fun.
you'd get his leg snapped off. But still, like I guess hypothetically,
Yeah, one fight in
the beef
boxing, one
wise, it
fight
makes
in
sense.
MMA.